So No Man's Sky has been out for about a week now and I've sunk a number of hours into it, and I've got to be honest, as much as I'm enjoying the game, it doesn't do a good job of really telling you what to do or how to go about doing a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of things that I know now that I wish I knew when I first started. So I just wanted to bring you a quick video today to go through a couple of tips and bits of advice on how to get started in No Man's Sky. Okay, so early on in the game you'll get access to the multi-tool, which is essentially your mining laser and weapon for the rest of the game. And as you begin the game, it is simply that, a mining tool with a laser beam that you can take away resources from the environment and break them down to the component parts, and you can use those for crafting and powering up your gear and things like that. But pretty early on as well, you also get an add-on to it called the Boltcaster add-on, which is in fact a more offensive weapon. It's essentially basically kind of like a machine gun, an assault rifle type add-on. And when I first fit this into the game, I had no idea how to actually use it, go about using it at all. I presumed at first that my mining laser just gained some kind of offensive power, but after fighting a number of creatures and sentinels with it and not really getting anywhere, I came to the conclusion that I simply wasn't using it right. So after doing a little bit of hunting around the internet, I found that indeed there are two modes you can switch your multi-tool in if you have the Boltcaster and mining laser equipped. And it's so easy, it's kind of embarrassing that I didn't figure it out earlier, and it's even worse that the game just didn't really outright tell me, or at least I missed it if it told me. So if you find yourself in a similar situation with a Boltcaster mod as well as a mining laser mod on your multi-tool, all that you have to do is press triangle on PlayStation at least. And that switches between the modes. Now if you look on the screen right now, you'll see that my weapon, my multi-tool, has a green kind of square on the back of it, which signifies that it's in mining mode. It doesn't have any ammo count, it just has a kind of an overheating meter. But if I press triangle, my character does a little bit of an animation and then it switches to a blue ammo count, and it's in Boltcaster mode now. And you can fend off wild animals and angry sentinels now, which is always nice. Now another little handy tip that I found while searching online is something that I've kind of come to call the super jump. Now you have a jetpack from the off in this game, and it helps you traverse kind of cliffs and get around a lot easier. In fact, if you hold it down while you're traversing a cliff, it won't actually use any fuel up, and it'll let you kind of climb that indefinitely just to stop you ever getting trapped in any holes or in any gorges, just to help you get around a little bit more. But the super jump, which has been discovered, almost might be a glitch in the game rather than a real move that was intended by the developers. And essentially what this super jump does is it catapults you across great distances very, very quickly. And essentially it lets you cut journeys on foot almost in half just by covering that much distance in a single bound. And to do this, it's really simple. All you have to do is start sprinting, and as you're approaching full speed on the sprint, just melee, use the melee button on R1 for the PS4 version again, and as you melee, if you hit the X button to engage your jetpack, it will, if you time it right, it'll catapult you forward miles and miles, and it cuts journeys in half almost, as I mentioned. I've had journeys that were penned in as 3 minutes cut down to about a minute 40 seconds, a minute and a half, just because I kept using this technique. And as long as you've got fuel in your jetpack and you've got stamina, you can kind of do this indefinitely really, with very short breaks in between just to recover those. Not only does it let you cover great distances, but it'll also let you traverse huge chasms and gorges as you encounter them, and let you get around a lot easier. I've kind of shaved off a lot of time having to, what I would have had to spend going round giant crevasses just by leaping over them in a single bound. So it's a really useful skill to master, and it might be a bit tricky the first few times because it takes very specific timing on the melee followed by the jump, but once you've done it, you'll kind of start doing it as just reflex. So next on our list is not so much a specific tip, it's more a bit of general advice, and that is, don't be frightened, particularly in the early game, to explore. When I first started, I felt very, very tethered to my ship. Didn't want to walk too far away from it, because ultimately the further away I walked from it, the further I had to walk back to it. And this game doesn't mess around with scale and size, and journey times can really rack up very, very quickly. But I needn't have been like this. I didn't have to worry about wandering way too far from my ship, because there's a lot of mechanics in the game, again, that it doesn't really outright explain, but you come to learn these, that always allow you to bring your ship to you almost. Now, as you wander around, you'll find lots of interesting things. You'll find new resources, new points of interest, potentially new upgrades for your suit, your multi-tool. You might even find a crashed ship or two, which could be an upgrade to your starting ship. When you find one of those, it's actually a similar process to the start of the game, where you have to repair it to get it off the ground. But as you go through the world and you get further and further away from your ship, don't worry too much about it, because a lot of these outposts and other bits and pieces and other points of interest that you find are equipped with these beacons that, if you construct a bypass chip for a very, very minor amount of credits, I think it's about 10 off the top of my head, I think it's about 10 iron and about 10 carbon, which you can find everywhere on pretty much every planet. You can craft one of these and use it on one of these beacons, which brings your ship to you. So essentially you can go off and explore, bring your ship to you, and then you start the process again, or you can leave the planet and go somewhere else. Don't worry too much about that. In fact, I'd extend this point and say, don't be too eager to necessarily leave your starting planet, unless of course you have the great luck for starting on a planet with minus 80-degree weather, acid rain 16 hours of the day, or radioactive storms ravaging the planet constantly. You couldn't get a lot of mileage out of your initial starting planet. I've seen a number of people say that they spent hours exploring every nook and cranny of their starting planet, only to max out their slots on their suit, upgrade their multi-tool, and even find a couple of new ships along the way that acted as really, really strong upgrades from the starting ship. So it's all blind luck in this game, but you never know, and there's no real rush to go off and leave the starting planet, unless you're far too excited to get out in the stars and start exploring even further. Now, the next tip actually follows on quite nicely from the third one, and that is, if you end up on a planet with adverse weather conditions such as storms or radioactivity or acid rain, anything kind of that gives you another countdown on your suit before you start taking damage, it almost limits you the amount of time you can spend out in the open exploring on these types of planets, which can slow down the process of exploring on an already fairly leisurely paced game. So I found a nice little tip that, as you're out and about on these radioactive kind of planets, or any other planet with adverse weather conditions, and you find yourself out in the middle of nowhere, no cover, the clock is ticking, your suit's about to expire against these elements, you can use the plasma grenades on your multi-tool, which is an upgrade you get again fairly early on into the game, to actually create impromptu caves that will act as shelter. So all you have to do essentially is find a rock face, find some ground, and blast away until you've got a cave that you can comfortably stand in. So walk to the back of your new impromptu cave, wait a few seconds, and your suit's defences should recharge and let you carry on as normal. So the last tip, or bit of advice, again plays into exploring, because that seems to be the biggest part of the game so far, for me at least. And that is, as you go around, you will scan pretty much everything in the environment. You'll scan plants, rock formations, animals, and I'd encourage you to do this, because every time you do, you essentially discover them, or at least if you're the first person on that planet, you'll discover them, and they'll be given a randomly generated name that's relevant to what they are, and you can then upload these findings into what's called the global database. And if you do so, you are actually awarded with credits. So as you explore, taking a few seconds out to scan the local wildlife, the local flora, the local fauna, will actually make you money. In fact, if you manage to discover every species of animal on a particular planet, you can upload this for a bonus, and the bonuses aren't too bad. And if you're spending a lot of time on a planet anyway, you're not really going out of your extra way to net yourself a couple of extra credits, so it's definitely worth doing. And in the early game, when maybe trading isn't as fleshed out as it is later on, and you maybe are fighting for resources, this is a nice stream of income, particularly in the very first, the early hours, as you're learning you're learning the mechanics of the game and you're patching up your starter ship. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that particular facet of the game. And that's not to mention that once you do upload that to the global database, that's yours. You've discovered that, and if anyone else discovers it, they'll see what you've called it. You get the chance to rename these things, so you can put a bit of a personal touch on it as well, which is kind of what this game's about. It's one of the unique aspects of it, which I quite like. So that's pretty much it really. I just wanted to go over a couple of tips. I think that's about 5 tips there, well, bits of advice just for early players to No Man's Sky. Maybe not the most crucial of information, just little almost quality of life tips that I thought I might share. And hopefully it'll just help with your enjoyment of the game. I've sunk quite a few hours into it now. I'm enjoying it. I never really bought into the hype, so I'm not really disappointed by it. I can see why some people may be, but I'm enjoying it for what it is, and I hope you will too. If you've liked these tips, if you could just give this video a like, it'll be much appreciated, and if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, we'll be doing more videos in the near future. Thanks for watching.